Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a brother that I had the pleasure of connecting with about 4 months ago over our social
Yep.
media platforms. He is a serial entrepreneur. He is a multimedia and business guru, mental health advocate. After we made our connection with one another, he inquired about my podcast, checked it out, liked what we were doing, and wanted to be a part of this experience. And so we had to make it happen. And so here we are this evening. My brother's coming out to share a little bit about his journey, his story, with the hopes of inspiring and encouraging and uplifting others, kind of helping us to navigate our challenges and moments of adversity in life. So drop a few gems on us this evening. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you Mr. Carlos Leguizamo. Carlos, thank you so much, my brother, for being on the show.
Thank you, Joseph. Mr. Roberts, Mr. Joseph Roberts. I go with both. What do you call you Joseph? Is that okay?
That's cool, man. That's
All
cool.
right. I mean, I appreciate it. I inquired about people that have their podcasts about 4 months ago. A lot of people said your name. You were very genuine, and I checked you out, and I'm excited today. I've been wanting to do this for a while, so
That's awesome, man. And I'm excited to have you on board and learn a little bit more about you. And I appreciate you making the connection, man. And we're gonna do some good things this evening. I think some people are gonna be blessed by what you have to share. So we're gonna
I
jump
think
right on
so.
into this, man.
I
So
think
I'm
so.
looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. So, but before we get into our segments this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to kind of give a general introduction about yourself. This is who I am. This is where I'm from. This is what I do. Kind of give them a
Okay.
little taste of who is Carlos Leguizamo.
Well, Joseph, I was born and raised in the Rose City, Tyler, Texas. Shout out to all my people in ETX 903. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I was born. Shout out to all my cancers. I'm a July baby. I was born July 7th. Both of my parents are from Mexico. My father immigrated over here in the early 80s. He is a welder. My mom basically came over here with me pregnant, and it's one of those things that I could have been born on either country. Thank God that I was born in the good old USA, Texas. Um, I went to Chapel Hill High School, the independent school district. I'm a bulldog. I went there my entire life. Um, I was a bit of a social butterfly. I had a many different types of. My neighborhood was eclectic. It had many different walks of life. We had a little Asian, a little Indian, a little Caucasian. So it was a hodgepodge of many different backgrounds, and a lot of video games when I was a kid. That's a lot I did. I was an only kid for 10 years. I'm the oldest of four siblings. My sister Jasenia is 27. Shout out to you. She's a wonderful mother of four beautiful nieces, boys, and girls. I got a lot of nieces and nephews. My 25-year-old brother is in the armed forces. Shout out to all my veterans. He's stationed in El Paso. My baby brother, 21, he's in Egypt currently right now on deployment. Shout out to you if you see this, George or Jorge. My father is deceased. I I have two children, 19-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son. Um, I currently am, doing this whole entrepreneur journey, and man, I've had a lot of different jobs, little jobs here and there, but predominantly I was in the oil and gas business for a long time, on and off. And I'm just happy to be alive, brother, and I'm just happy to, have an opportunity to speak to you.
Awesome, awesome.
Thank you for that question.
Oh, absolutely. I thank you for your response to it because I mean, again, that's good backdrop information to know, and again, we're just scratching the surface. We're just getting started, so I'm already getting even more excited to learn more about your story and everything. So I want to kind of build upon what you just said, what you spoke to. Because personally, I feel like when we talk about our journeys, we talk about our stories in life. You really can't capture the full essence of that unless you go back to the beginnings of where it all starts from. And again, you kind of gave us a little bit of taste of some clips of that, but I want to delve into that a little bit more. So if you would, as you reflect back to the early years of life, growing up in Tyler, Texas, for those who are not familiar with Texas or Tyler, Texas in particular, kind of tell us, what was it like overall for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there was any challenges, along the way in growing up. Kind of give us the backdrop, the detailed story about that, because again, I believe that it kind of shapes where your journey begins and kind of gives us a clearer perspective of what led you to be the person and the man that you are today. A lot of that, I truly believe, started in those early beginnings. So, if you
Man.
would share that with us.
So, man, I'm doing my Stevie J, shaking my hands. So I was born in the hood. I was raised in the hood a little bit here in Tyler. For the first 3 years of my life, I mean, obviously I was a child. I lived on a street called Border Street. And anybody that watches this knows where that is. It's back in the '80s. Tyler was wild. There's a book called Smith County Justice. You would probably find the redacted version. Smith County's got a interesting history. There is a movie that came out in 1993 too, based on that book called Rush. I can't remember, don't quote me on that. But uh, like I had said before, my father unfortunately passed away in September 6th of '89. My mom was 24 at the time. All she had ever known for 21 years of her life was Mexico. So here she is with a 3-year old by herself and not knowing what to do. Before my dad passed away, um, he bought a house, and then that's when I moved to Chapel Hill ISD. And moving from where I was, I'm grateful where I originally was living to where I grew up. I mean, it's in the same town, two completely different parts of town. Now, am I gonna say that? Do I know that if it was rough, I can only go by what people that are older than me that grew up in that time frame told me. I got a lot of older homies that sold dope and did a lot of illicit activities, and just hearing about it as I grew up. Um, where I grew up, my dad left behind a bit of an estate, and thank God for life insurance. My dad had a couple of policies, so anybody that is on the fence of wanting to buy an insurance policy that's like $20 a month, please do so. I'm a product of that. I would have been me and my mom. I really don't know, brother. I genuinely don't know what would have happened if that wouldn't have been the case because my my mom was resourceful enough to pay off the house and things of that sort. So I was a only kid for about 10 years before my sister was born. My mom remarried. Um, And in those first 10 years, or let's just say from like 4 to 9, I didn't have, I didn't have no siblings. I didn't have no cousins. It was just me and my mom. And all I had was books, Nintendo NES, Super Nintendo NES. And all I did was read, daydream, tinker with so many different things. And around this time, Tyler was Tyler was and is a huge religious town. It's very conservative. It's red. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt. Uh, and I was raised Catholic. Uh, there's a pretty large Catholic community here, and I took courses to become confirmed. To use quotation marks, and I ended up doing a little bit more of reading about the Bible, about reading about the Quran, reading other biblical texts. And I'm a kid. Keep this in mind. I'm a child. I'm a kid, and I'm soaking all this information, not realizing as I got older, it shaped my mind to where I was very open minded because I was taking in so many different. I can say that it may have done some harm to a degree because knowledge is power, but not all knowledge is good knowledge. It depends on the source it's from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't become self aware until years later. What I was reading, I was picked on pretty horribly when I was a baby. When I was a kid, I was little, um, scrawny kid. Um, I played with the neighborhood children, played kickball, basketball. I mean, I had friends, and the one thing that I can say from my mother's perspective is that she put me into Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts. I don't, if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would be where I'm at because
Hmm.
then that exposed me to travel to other races, other cultures, other cuisines. Got to see the United States, or at least the greater Southwest area. You know what I mean? Um, so I can say for anybody that was raised by a single mom, and me and my mother don't have the best relationship, Joseph. But as I've gotten older, I don't know how she did it. It makes me emotional if I think about it because it to be 24 years old, 25, 26, 27 in a state, even though we border, I mean Texas is a huge state, it takes several hours to get to the border and even many more hours to get to her hometown. My mom, my mom's home state. You build resiliency, you build character, you build, I didn't want for nothing basically. Did I
Mm-hmm.
grow up wealthy? No, absolutely not. Did I have to want for anything? No. I didn't know no better until I got older. And when parents say, "Well, till you have kids," that is true.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that is true. Um, we had a very tumultuous relationship. Like again, I didn't have, father. The streets, and people that ran the streets was my dad. And but I always had the mind frame not to get too deep entrenched into the things that they were doing. Um, I mean, I got into girls, at a very young age, but around this time now, because of Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, I think it set me in a trajectory where I am now because I have such a innate drive to learn. I have such a penchant to learn. I'm just wired this way. I don't know. But as I got older and I read more and more literature, I mean, that's what my bubble was. That was my cocoon was books. And I didn't. I mean, I had friends and stuff, but they weren't gonna do it. They were not. They didn't care to read. I mean, I'm talking about like comic books or R.L. Stein, Goosebumps, Hardy Boys. I mean, all the way to like I started reading the Britannica encyclopedia. I was a lonely kid, so I just had books and daydreaming and just letting my mind wander. Um, Tyler, at the time, when I got into like middle school, there wasn't really a lot to do. There was a lot of like teen dances, the typical teenager things. I experimented with some things, um, smoking and smoke cigarettes, which wasn't for me, and like having a couple of beers, things of that sort. But um, nah, my thing was more my books and girls. That was my thing. That was my vice was young ladies and. Growing up to that extent, it sharpened reading so much, and then just being, like cool with everybody. I learned how to converse with people, and I speak more than one language. Um, but then I also realized that Tyler was very limited at the time in what I wanted to do with my life. So, as I got older, I had to skedaddle and leave and see the world, see other things. So,
Awesome, awesome, man. First off, I appreciate your transparency and sharing, a more extensive detail about your beginnings. Of course, I completely identify right away with the single parent situation. Mom being the head of the home and and how, how she stepped up and took care of things. And like you said, it was to the point to where, no, we weren't wealthy, but I didn't
Hmm.
want for nothing, and I didn't even realize, what we were perhaps quote unquote lacking even until you got into,
Right.
to your adulthood, and like, oh wow, we didn't have that, we didn't have this. But again, that's just, represents the strength of a mom. And shout out to our single moms, just the strength of being able to step up in situations like this. In your case, your dad passing away, and her, mom having to step up and make things happen, provide for her
Right.
family. And
Right.
so I'm always excited to hear stories like that, and also relate to what you mentioned about the impact that scouting has. I also was involved in scouting as a kid, and there are some elements to it that will not only expose you to different kids and different experiences and whatnot, but it's also kind of helps you to mature a bit, because you get the presence of, in Boy Scouts, you typically you got the presence of more of that male,
Hmm.
leadership,
Yep.
if you will, kind of learning things that perhaps, without having your dad around, you might have picked up on some things that were helpful in shaping and molding you. And then even in the Cub Scout realm, where you have your den mothers, again, they were like an alternate mom extension. I remember that very vividly, because I initially grew up as a Catholic, when I was a kid. So that was a very big part of my life. And like I said, the den mothers were often, many of some of my mom's closest friends, and even to this day, I consider them to be like extended, surrogate, if you will, mothers
Right.
out there that you learn things from. So, and then just again, it's always cool to hear, when you grew up in a setting that, it was kind of the streets, you had to deal with and contend with, not to get too caught up in that life and all of that, to know the things that you're accomplishing today, the works that you're doing. It's a testament to, how God had his covering over your life to see
Right.
you through what could have otherwise went in a totally different direction, but for you,
Exactly.
it's led you down a path to where now you're in a position to be able to pour into other people, into other people's businesses, to come alongside folks who need your services, your insight. And so that's just an exciting and wonderful thing to reflect on. So again, I appreciate you sharing that.
No
So
problem.
absolutely. So, as we go through life, we get through our childhood, we embark on adulthood. One of the things about life is, if you live long enough, in addition to those vast experiences that you get to encounter and be a part of, there's also a series of storms that you also will encounter through life. And every
Hmm.
now and then you get hit with a storm that hits a little different. It's one of those things where you're like, man, I'm usually good at navigating my way through some stuff, but every now and then we get hit with something that is a little bit heavier, a little bit more burdensome, and we start to have our doubts. We have our fears, we have our stresses, our worries, our concerns. Like, how am I going to get out of this? And so, with that said, if you would, I would like you to tell us about a time when you found yourself in that type of situation where maybe you didn't see a way out. You didn't know how you were going to overcome this particular challenge in life. You had doubts, you had concerns, you had fears. You're here today. So we know,
Hmm.
through God's grace and mercy, you were able to make it through. But at that time, in that moment, you weren't so sure. So if you would kind of tell us, what was that experience like for you that you're about to share, and what was ultimately the turning point where you began to sort of see some light at the end of the tunnel, where you were kind of coming up out of that stormy
Whew.
point in your life?
I got a good one. I mean, there's been a lot of tumultuous moments in my life. I've done a lot of sin, done a lot of good. Um, I've done some pretty deplorable things to other people, but equally, I have an amazing heart, and I love animals. I could wish I could, rescue every stray if I could, or help the elderly. And I love children, love kids, the next generation. Going back to what I had said initially, my vice wasn't alcohol. I mean, I've drank, and I've smoked cannabis, but I've never really, meth and all that other stuff. Nah, I never got into drugs. My vice was women. And well, let me answer the question. Uh, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. It's one of the commandments. broke that one pretty hastily. Uh, I had a relationship with a woman that I shouldn't have had. And after that relationship ended, my life spiraled out of control and I hit rock bottom. You can't you can't go in life messing people over and not expect something the universe to correct itself or God to get you or for you not pay for your sins. I don't care what religion or what you ascribe to, what deity you pray to. You can't go hurting children and not something's going to happen to you. You can't go hurting people's hearts, whether if it's man or woman. You can't mess over customers. So something, it might not be now, it might be later. And for me, it was a multitude of many sins and infractions of other people's consciousness and their minds, and I broke a lot of people. It all came, like I said, the dominoes just fell all at one time. I mean, stuff hit the fan, and all hell broke loose for me, and kind of lost myself a little bit. And I can wholeheartedly say that I don't even know if you want to call it like a nervous breakdown, but I lost myself for a while. I was not okay to the point where I tried to take my own life. And a lot of people, especially in our communities, black and brown, have a hard time talking about this. But I think if they see somebody that looks like them, that speaks like them, maybe not necessarily the same language, um, it's easier to talk about. Because a lot of people will say, especially nowadays, that, mental health advocate, a lot of men don't have an outlet to speak. And I see it too many times. I know people that were close to me or that I knew that ended up taking their lives. People that I grew up with. Rest in peace, Cameron. He hung himself. He had other problems going on. He hung himself, and some other people that I know, I knew of, or I just kicked it with. They also too, and not always it was behind a woman, um, but I was I was lost. I was I was a different person. I was I don't even want to say spaced out. I really had just literally lost my mind because it was like a tidal wave of a correction or if how depending on how you perceive time, I lost everything, and I I outside of committing sins and being negative or not caring about what only about myself. I tend to be a selfish person. And it's okay to be selfish sometimes, out depending on the context, because you have
Hmm.
to put you first. But in this regard, you can't go around messing people's heads, hearts, and households up and not something happen to you because that's you're playing with fire. And in this case, nobody got me, I got myself. And in that time frame, it took me it took me some years to get back myself, to get it back together. And looking back on it, it made me realize not to put so much emphasis on things that because I've changed, I've changed or I've gotten better at some things, made better choices. Even though I'm still not a perfect human being, I still, have my vices. I think that's something that you cannot just sit there and go on in life doing. So if anybody that sees this, um, just know there is light at the end of the tunnel. You always hear that. You always like, what is the light? For me, it was I came out a different person. It was like the phoenix rising out of the ashes. It was like I was reborn almost. I didn't get baptized or anything of that sort. I didn't attend church, but in this time period, I tried to take my own life. I hit rock bottom. I lived in my car for a little bit to chase my dreams. Things happened to me that I don't even know explain how I'm still here. Like,
Mm,
and this was all because of the choices that I made, messing with the women that I was messing with, or the people that I was around.
mm-hmm,
But then I don't want to call it. I don't want to say it's supernatural. I don't want to go that far. But what I can say is I have. It's uncanny the things that happen to me and how because of my experiences and this God given intellect, that I could kind of predict some things. Just looking at the patterns, looking at things around me, and to come out of that by myself. You hear the pull your bootstraps up. I did. I mean, I seeked help. I did things on my own, but I don't. Again, not to go too deep into it, so, on a time crunch or a time emphasis, but I just kind of like a Homo erectus, just finally learning to be a bipedal creature, learning how to, or a toddler, learning how to walk. I just put one foot, baby steps, one foot in the other, and here I am talking to you about it. So I think for me, it's a win, and it was a time in my life that what was I thinking doing what I was doing? I didn't care, but I did care. It's just one of those,
mm-hmm,
uh, walking contradiction kind of things. But it's just something that I'm going to carry in here and in here, but I'm going to think with this more than with this.
mm-hmm.
So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it absolutely did. Again, appreciate your transparency in that to be open about that type of thing. Particularly as a man, it's hard for us as men to confess, especially on platform like this, to where you say, yeah, I messed over some people. In particular,
That's an
being
understatement,
specific,
man.
yeah, like I said, that's an
That's
understatement. Like,
an
you
understatement.
you started off your story. You started off with, I coveted someone's wife. I messed with heads. I messed with hearts. I messed with households. Um,
Yep.
so I applaud you just for your transparency. I mean, I appreciate that. That's a big step in overcoming in transforming into a better version of yourself, is when you can call what you do what it is. So that's why when you hear, about, we need to call our sins what they are. Don't try to sugarcoat it. Don't try to
Nah.
soften it or pad it up to make it, look like something else. Yeah, I did something that I ain't have anything. I had no business doing.
You got
That's
to be
and it.
accountable.
Yes, that's what it is. I was accountable. I'm being accountable about it. I'm owning up to it. I'm manning up, and so I appreciate you doing that. A few takeaways though from what you said. One word in particular that you mentioned in describing your whole story here is you talked about correction. And I think that word is, we don't want to overlook that. And we want to understand the power of that, because a lot of times when we, get ourselves caught up in sin, when we get ourselves caught up in making, poor decisions or what have you, a lot of times we will assume a lot of times, or we'll conclude a lot of times, that when, things start falling apart, where it seems like our world is crumbling all around us, we'll assume that this is our way of being punished, if you will, for what we've done.
Hmm.
And I'm, again, knowing, who God is and how he operates, even in the midst of our, wildest antics and rambunctious behaviors and all of that kind of stuff.
Wow,
Um,
this answer, I like that.
yeah, it's like God is not, we know that he has the ability to, quote unquote, punish us for what we've done. But when you have a relationship with God, the beautiful thing, even in the midst of your sin, is that he doesn't per se punish you, but he does offer a pathway of correction. And part of that pathway of correction does involve, from time to time, us maybe having to lose some things. We have to
Right.
experience some things falling apart. It's like, in order to make you into what you need to be to come up out of where you are, I got to blow it all up and then begin to piece it all back together. And so, as I heard you talking about that, that's kind of what
Man.
it sounded like happened. I blew all
Yeah.
your
I mean,
situation up. I brought you, and in the blowing of it all up, you were at your lowest moment, even to the point of getting ready to take your life, but yet it didn't happen. Yet, as low as you might have felt that you got, you still were left with enough to be able to begin to kind of turn things around and come back up out of that, come up out of that moment. And as you stated in your own words, it was like, I came out a new person, so to speak. I was a new version of myself, a more positive version of myself, a more I don't know if you paid attention to our title for this evening, because it's the epitome of what you said. Choose wisely. I started to understand that my choices mattered, and I had to be smart about
man,
what I
that's
did
a
and how I
amen.
did. I now choose wisely.
Right.
Even to when you said earlier, and I totally connected with that. When you said earlier about, I cared, but I didn't care, but I cared. And I know it sounds like a contradiction, but a lot of times that's a very realistic, existence. It's like when we're in the moment doing the dirt that we do,
Hmm.
I'm not caring because I'm thinking about it solely on what I'm getting out of it. But the fact that you have a conscience about it, that something stirs
Oh
inside of you
man.
afterwards that says, you know what, it felt good in the moment, but now that I reflect on what I just did, what I just said, how I just acted, the fact that you are even like acknowledging the fact that you're conflicted, like, man,
Oh
I
yeah,
should have I
definitely. I
shouldn't have
mean,
did that.
right, right, right.
That is a powerful
Being
indication
self-aware.
that you're self-aware. It's a powerful thing that's saying that when you start at least feeling like, acknowledging the fact that that wasn't right, that's half the battle right there. And so that's a good thing. And I know you were trying to downplay about, I don't want to call it a, supernatural or whatever, but again, when you're in a relationship with God, when God is a part of your existence, when he has his hands over you, that is exactly what it was. It was a divine intervention. He didn't let you take yourself out. He didn't let you felt like you were at rock bottom, but he was there all along. Just had to correct you. He had to create a pathway of correction so you could get to where you are today. Part of what you do in my introduction of you was, I said you're a mental health advocate. How can you advocate on the behalf of mental health if you haven't understood or experienced what it feels
What it's
like
like.
to
Yeah.
lose that mental existence? You can't relate to me about mental health if you've never been through anything. So part of that storm that you had to go through was to prepare you for what you now, one of the things that you now do is to advocate on a stage, on a space of mental health. So
Man.
it all pieces together, and that's why I like to go through the storyline like we're doing, because to make the connection that this didn't happen just by accident. This wasn't just a bad time. This was intentional. You had to go through this to be where you are now, to get to where you're still trying to get to. So so those are my takeaways of what you said, man. But it's powerful in that, and I know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know you were getting ready to say
No,
something,
no, no,
but
no.
yeah, I mean, this, for our listeners, understand, and that's why I say, with our storms, we got to stop thinking about our storms as being just this horrible negative event, and we got to turn
No.
on a different mindset and saying, yeah, it may not feel good, it
It
may be
has to be a
uncomfortable.
paradigm shift.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be that paradigm shift. I have to go through this to be what I need to be, in order for those gifts that are inside of me, for those things to manifest themselves, for me to be a blessing to other people, for me to walk in my purpose. Part of that process, part of that journey involves some breaking. I got to break you from some stuff. I got to pull some stuff up out of you, and I got to replace that with some new
Right.
stuff so you can do
Yeah.
your thing. Because you
Yeah.
can't do your
Yeah.
thing. You can't walk in that purpose if you still carrying around
No.
all that junk. That'll keep you distracted. That'll keep you
Yeah.
off point. You won't be focused. You won't be locked in, and you'll just continue in a cycle of mess and chaos and confusion. You can't be a blessing to anybody in that moment, in that space. Does that mean that you're
Absolutely.
perfect now? No, none of us
No.
are. We still stumble, we still fall from time to time, but each day we get better, we keep improving because it's all about the consistency. It's all about the let me stay engaged, let me stay locked in, let me let me not try to be my own superhero and trying to do all of this all on my own. Let me rely
Right.
upon a source. In this case, I'm
Hmm.
saying God being that source to help me navigate through so that I don't feel like I got to pull my own bootstraps up. So I don't feel like I got to put on my own cape to save the day. I don't have to do that. And when I try to do that, I don't do anything but potentially mess things up or let the process last way longer than it needed to just because I was trying to operate solo instead of seeking the help that was right there in front of me. God wanting to help me, wanting to be there for me because he saw the potential in me. He saw the gifts in me. Why? Because he put them there. He
Right.
knows what you have, even though you didn't know. He's helping you realize those daydream moments that you had as a kid. If you want to make those daydreams become realities, you want them to transform from being possibilities to realities. This is what you have to go through. Your storm is not going to be my storm. My storm ain't going to be your storm, but you still have to go through these storms to get to where you need to get to. So, um, that was my what I received from what you said, and again, very very powerful story, and I appreciate so much your transparency. In telling that, and one last thing, real quick, the fact that you point out about particularly with men not um, having that space to where they can open up.
They
You
don't.
talked about having friends and people that you knew who took their lives. Many times when that happens, it's because there was something inside that was going on, that because how we were raised as young men, being told that you got to be tough, you got to be strong. It's not okay for you to be crying and whining and
No.
moaning because that means you're soft and all of that kind of stuff. And so then because you want to live
Doesn't
up
that at all.
to that standard that's been set out there, not a healthy one, but you're living up to it because I want to be a man, you're holding in all of this stuff when you really needed to talk to somebody. You really needed to have a space that was safe for you to let it out. But if I don't get a chance to let it out and I hold it in,
It becomes
unfortunately,
cancerous.
it becomes cancerous to us, or it takes us to a space to where we don't think we're important anymore. We don't think we matter
No.
anymore. And we go to extreme levels where kind of what we say, we seek out permanent solutions to temporary problems. So we take our lives, we destroy
What
ourselves. We don't give our
What was the
chance.
last thing you said? We take
We seek
temporary what?
we seek out permanent solutions for temporary problems. You know,
That's
we don't you don't
that's
want to
bad.
do that. Yeah.
That's some powerful stuff. We take permanent. We do permanent. Say that one more time. We take that needs to be on
yeah,
a shirt.
yeah, what I was basically saying is that we initiate, we take permanent, we seek permanent solutions to
To
temporary
temporary
problems.
problems.
Mhm.
Man, that's some
Yeah.
philosophy.
Yeah, and you don't want to take
That's some
permanent solutions. I mean, so
no.
many people, and not only through this podcast that I've experienced that with people, but
Hmm.
just in life, people just lose themselves. They, like you said, they,
Woo! Do they
yeah,
not? I mean, I can. Oh man, I did. I know I did. Oof.
yeah, man. So, you're blessing us, man, and sharing your story and being so transparent with this because all the stuff that you're talking about is real everyday type of things that people are going through, men and women,
Hmm.
across the races, across the
It's a pressure
across
cooker.
the yes. And so this is, again, we're what we're talking about here is how do we put ourselves in position to where when we're facing these adverse moments, whether they're extreme things like some of what you shared, or even if it's just the minor everyday stuff, because sometimes we'll let the even basic everyday stuff pile up and blow up into
That's me.
a big
That's me.
crazy thing,
That. Hmm.
and it's kind of like, why are you making as they say, why are you making a mountain out of a molehill, so to speak? You making this way bigger than what it needed to be. You're doing too much, and
you,
it's
you
harming
you
you.
preaching to the choir.
It's harming you, and you're potentially harming other people with
Right.
that negative energy, that negative mindset, if you will. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to expel that poison onto others, whether you intend to do it or not, because you're just not processing correctly. You're not
No.
handling these challenges properly. So, Again, man, appreciate you sharing that, man. And I
No
mean, I'm
problem.
trying not to dominate the conversation. I was just
No, no,
feeling
no.
what you said, man, and I'm just like,
I said
I
a
want to make
mouthful,
sure that
man. So
you said, yeah. I just want to make sure we're grasping, the substance of what you're saying because you're dropping the word too, and I want our audience to make sure that they're gravitating to this. So, with that said, man, when you are dealing with challenging moments, I mean, obviously we've talked about some deep stuff here, but as we've both talked about, all storms are not going to be heavy. Sometimes it's just the day to day, life type stuff that we deal with, problems and challenges and moments of adversity. So, what I'm curious to know from you, what is it in particular that you like to do that works best for you when you find yourself facing challenging moments? What is that healthy process that you like to go through that best suits you in dealing with challenging times?
I am going back to what I said before. Um, I'll answer this in a couple of ways.
Mhm.
I'm an emotional eater. I love food. I love that's part of how I got to know other people was through the cuisine, their culture, talking to them about their culture, talking to them about the food, the spices, how they cook, because I want to implement that into my day-to-day life. But you really get to know people like the nitty-gritty things of a family and of a family hierarchy or structure, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I really enjoy eating with people, just like a community thing. Um, I love animals. I think, obviously people will say they're the biggest whatever, but I kind of take mine to an extreme. I send people that I care very deeply about little reels on social media about hedgehogs, porcupines, baby goats. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And I don't have any pets currently because I don't have the time. But if I did have the time, I've had a zoo before, quote unquote. I've had many different types of animals over the years. I I I I would have a dog that I could just go walk and running with. I think a lot of people, especially people that are avid animals like me know what I'm talking about. Animals love you unconditionally, especially dogs. You can be gone 10 minutes. And it's like you've been gone 1,000 years, and they're ripping at you to get to you, but then you have to then you and it's like a different perspective of time because I have a very interesting relationship with time and how I view it. They give you their best every day because their time is very limited because of how they age, and
Mhm.
their cells are dying. You know that the best years are going to be every day with them. So I've done things to. I've even gone to the pet store after a hard day. I haven't done it in years. I used to just go to the pet store and mess with the animals, pick up a little guinea pig, and it's making its little noises and mess with birds. Travel. I love to travel. I love the mountains. I have something about mountains in God's country. Talking about Wyoming, Colorado. That's a very big stress relief. But like on a micro level, in the day to day, it's not the healthiest. I love a good drink. A good cocktail, good margarita. Take off the edge off the day. I love taking naps. I mean, I don't know if that's just because I'm getting older, but a good power nap is always, very, it helps me just kind of woosah throughout the day. One thing that I have not done that I know that I do is walking. Walking helps me. I mean, obviously it's exercise, but walking helps me think. Walking, and then I have a manual car. Driving and walking, just driving just to the most random place. It helps me think and alleviate and think through my progressions, if you will,
Mhm.
mentally. Like, what am I upset about? And if I can't have that, man, I'm a whole different person. Um, but there's many things that I can share. I mean, sometimes it's always good. I love children. I said I have two of my own and nieces and nephews, but when I love someone and their kids become my kids, or it's like a bonus baby or a friend, and they need somebody to watch their kid. I'll be the first one to volunteer. I don't know. I'm a big kid at heart, and I mean, I dressing up or just whatever it is to make them smile or laugh, hearing their little giggles makes my day. So dogs and babies. I'm very soft hearted when it comes to that. But I have to be very careful because I'm also very on the other side of that. Like I turn into something else if somebody messes with like a defenseless animal or an elderly person. I used to volunteer and work in nursing homes. I love the elderly and just talk to them because I saw that nobody would come and talk to them. So
Mm,
I'd really go above and beyond, get them another extra snack or be like a liaison to them and to the family when I wasn't working out of town or out of state. And you learn a lot. You know what I mean? You learn a lot about the past and people's lives, and then you realize you're like, dang, my life ain't really that hard comparative to what they had to go through. But there's not necessarily like a go-to thing that I can do. And what I can say on a day-to-day level, I mean, sometimes I gotta go get a drink, man. That's just me. I'm not. I don't want to push, alcohol that you need a drink in order to cope because that can spiral down. But comparative to what I was going through before, I think just a good old, old-fashioned and just sitting there for a minute and woosah and cut up with friends or family, it goes a long way. But my ultimate thing, and some people might find this a little strange, I think it's just because of the way I'm wired. I like working. I'm a workaholic. It's like in my DNA, and not because I'm Mexican, because the whole jokes of Mexicans working hard. You know what I mean? But it's me completing somebody's dream or goals does something to me that I don't know how to describe it. Supernatural, going back to that word, I like producing income for other people. I like taking someone's thoughts and making it into something tangible. I mean, I work a lot, and working for me is therapeutic. I don't know. Some people find that strange. I've heard that, but I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett is 90 something years old, and he's still working. I don't think I'm ever gonna stop working, stop moving. It's just my brain. I could be tired, take a nap, drink, go to sleep. I'd wake up, do some work. I could be hobbled. I've been injured. I've been down. I've had no car. I will find a way to work. That's just. I enjoy working. That's my biggest stress release. Obviously, outside of working out and with kids and animals, but my work ethic is insane, to be honest. And when I'm working, I feel like I'm accomplishing something. So for me, I think anybody that is find your passion or find your middle ground, and if it might be strange to you or it might be strange to other people, don't let another person sway you from what reduces your stress load. If it's drinking, if it's knitting, if it's reading a book, if it's feeding the squirrels outside, doesn't matter, going outside just for some fresh air. I don't like it when people try to devalue what another person does with their free time or their free will, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, that is kind of stupid." That just impose their negativity onto them. So, but yeah, definitely, I love working, brother. So I think that's my biggest stress release outside of the things that I mentioned.
wow, I love your approach. I mean, because it's not one. It's very it's very uniquely creative in the sense that you know a lot of times when we're stressing out about something, it's really easy to make it be all about us. But what everything that you shared, a good portion of it, it's almost like you deal with stress, you deal with the challenges of life just by pouring into other people, whether it's like you said,
Right,
it's in your work,
right.
whether it's, coming alongside an elderly person, whether it's spending time with animals, whether it's, spreading some joy and laughter with kids. You take pouring into other people as a pathway to keep your peace, your sanity, intact, so that when you are dealing with challenging stuff, it's a lot easier for you to process. You even talked about, you know, getting out to maybe do that walk or going for that, random drive somewhere to just clear your head, because that's the key thing
Man, it
is to just clear your head. And I
hit
don't
a
even
back
want people
road.
to, yeah, I don't even want people to kind of raise an eyebrow just because you made mention about a drink. There's nothing wrong,
In
with
moderation.
having a drink. There you go. you know but if you're not using the drink as being your source of solving problems, where I think
Mm-mm,
that I'll just drink until I can't drink no more, and that solves
mm-mm.
my problem. Yeah, now we got a different issue that we're talking about. But if a nice
No.
sip of a drink calms you
I'm
down and
grown.
gets you to stay locked in and to be able to properly focus in on the problem or the situation that you're up against, nothing wrong with that, you know. And then of course, like, I love the power nap. We don't have appreciation for naps when we're kids. We hate to have to have to take a nap. The older you
Right.
get, I love my naps too. And so, and it does something for you to just kind of resets you,
Right.
recharges you, man, so you can
Yeah.
get going and doing what it is that you're going to do. So everything that you said, man, was beautiful, and I just love the broadness of the approach, that you're not necessarily just locked into one particular thing. There's a multitude of things, but the theme is the same: pouring into other people.
Yeah.
Brings me joy, brings me peace, brings me calm. Even when I'm stressing or whatever, it helps to keep me relaxed, keep me settled. So then that way, it helps you to better process again those challenging moments in life. And I had to kind of chuckle to myself when you were talking about your about dogs. Because I was actually sharing with my daughter before we even got on air, about, I said, this is going to be an interesting podcast episode. And she said, why you say that? And I pointed to your name. And the reason why I did that, because I do have a dog and his name is Carlos. And so
Oh,
I was saying to myself, I was concerned. I said, if I keep
that's
saying
funny.
Carlos throughout the episode, he might be thinking that I'm actually talking to him, and he'll keep running in here by me trying
He's
to.
gonna pop up his head like, what?
He's like, what? I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the other Carlos. But as you stated, when they talk about dog, being man's best friend, and just the love that they show you, even if you're just gone for a moment. He's the same way with me, as I'm sure many pets are with their respective owners, where he stays by me, stays up under me, he's always there. Even if I'm down, it's almost like he can sense it and he wants to perk you up and cheer you up, kind of thing. So that's beautiful what you spoke about, your regimen, your routine with that, dealing with the challenges of life. I love that. So, Carlos, if you had an opportunity, man, to speak to that younger version of yourself, I mean, you shared a lot about some of the challenges, devices, the things that you had to process and deal with back then, comparing to
Mm.
where you are today. If you could talk to the younger Carlos, or perhaps somebody's listening to this episode and they are in that life, that situation, that way of thinking that you used to be in, what would be your words of encouragement and empowerment to them that says, you know what, there's a better way to do this, there's a better mindset to have? What would be those words of inspiration and encouragement that you would have?
Um, it's a great question. First and foremost, anybody that watches this, and if you have a dream, no matter how asinine or and crazy or silly it may be, don't let nobody get you off your dream. Too many times I've seen, especially in my line of work, where a lot of parents sway their children away from their passions, and it comes back to haunt them because they just didn't know no better. They were ignorant to the fact of what their child was doing. I've dealt with this myself, um, personally, from as a youngster. Uh, if I was talking to myself, I would say leave women alone, leave girls alone. When I was from the eighth grade on up, not lose your virginity as young as you did. Well, that's 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 uh to be determined what young, but I wasn't ready. Focus on your books, train your mind, body, be more social. Um, read that book, ask that girl. And I know I just said, but ask the proper girl on the date. Um, a lot of the people that bullied me when I was a kid ain't doing nothing with their lives now. It's interesting. And how funny, I'm planning my 20-year house game reunion. Interesting. It's
Mm.
how the things come back around. Um, there's a very, I think out of all the questions, this one's because I've been asked this before, but I've never really went in. What I can say, especially for a lot of young ladies out here, speaking from the other end of it, if you're in an environment where there's not a lot of options, if it's poverty, if it's craziness is in the house, utilize the arts, music, poetry, singing, dancing. You never know how you could turn your pain into something that could change your paradigm, your life, because we have content creation, we have the internet, we have live streaming. You can take your pain and
Mm-hmm.
turn it into a profit. You can take, you can be the next Rihanna, you can be the next whomever. And to little boys, not everybody's going to be an NFL player. Not everybody's going to be able to be in the NBA. Not everybody's going to be able to learn a trade, stay in your books, because too many of the head of the household, the parents, they put they live through the children vicariously, and not too many people talk about that. Too many parents put their kids on a whole different destiny or timeline because they're wanting what they want their kids to do, not their children. You should be the parent, not the friend. And I see too many times so many kids not being kids. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's important to do some self reflection, especially as a teenager. So if I'm talking to myself, I can speak for other because I was that person. I was a young parent. If you're not ready to do something, seek outside counsel outside of your parents, maybe an uncle, maybe the grandparent, because sometimes the people that love you especially younger, don't have the best advice. They don't have, they mean well, but they just don't know no better. And in the long term, in the micro and the macro, it does a lot of damage, especially coming from a cultural perspective, especially if, like in the black and brown community, um, because if you're doing things that you're not ready for psychologically and emotionally, and I didn't have any structure. I didn't have a dad. It messed me up. And I was looking for love in all the worst places, if you will. I wouldn't have had. I don't know. That's a iffy one about kids because it made me love life more. But I wasn't ready to be a young parent. I would say above all else, mo- have have something that you love. It can be a sport. It could be an art. It could be something, but have something to love and latch onto and don't let it go. Too many times we can be infallible creatures and we don't even know what that even means as youngsters, or you just don't read a lot, but have something concrete that can be deeply rooted in you that is going to benefit you exponentially later on in life, whether if it's loyalty, structure, love to self. I didn't have any of that. What I did have was my creativity and my smarts. If I didn't have them two things, I don't know where I would be. I might be dead or in prison, or I would have 1,000 kids. you
Mm.
know, uh, I think too many kids don't have something that's deeply rooted within them, instilled by the parent, parents, um, grandparents, the village, if you will. And then too many times they get swayed from that thing that they love. Whether if it's like I'm a nerd at heart. I'd be the first one to admit. I love a lot of things that a lot of people thought was weird, but not really. Now looking back on it, I'm like, man, why not stick with that? So I
Hmm.
think just to answer that question ultimately is, if a parent sees this and your child is, you can make millions of dollars now playing video games. Let that kid play that game. Sometimes their grades may not be the best performance indicator of how they're learning. Maybe they need to learn visually, from an audio perspective. Maybe they need to, because I mean, that's a whole another, that's going down the rabbit hole. But it's important for you to let your children to be children. Too many times that these kids are growing up way too fast, and you end up getting the pandemics that we have now within our youth. So, I would tell myself, leave girls alone. Young boys, leave girls alone. It's nothing there. It's okay if you don't lose your virginity. You ain't gonna be not cool or cooler. Young ladies, please have a strong male figure in your life. And like I said, have something to just have something deeply rooted within that you can hold on to, whether if it's God, church, an activity, something that will not sway you from who you are at your core.
Awesome, awesome. Very, very good advice. And like you said, you covered all the spectrums, from boy, girl, parents, all of
Hmm.
that. I think you hit some very powerful points that we, regardless of what your status is at this moment in time, if you're listening to this episode, you can pull some things from that and apply it immediately to the way you're doing life. And so I appreciate those gems that you dropped today, man. I just want to say, man, it has been such a great pleasure having this conversation with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, getting to know you much better. The layers to your life and what you're doing, man. And I'm glad we were able to make this connection. And and I'm excited for what your future has in store for you.
Thank you.
You're on a good path. You're a good brother, and and a true creative at heart. But as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, before I let you go, I do want to take this opportunity to celebrate you, to acknowledge you, to show you some love, man. So if you got some exciting news, some projects coming up, things that are going on, whether it's professionally or if it's personally, please, share that with us, how people can connect with you, all that good stuff. Because again, we want to acknowledge you, we want to celebrate you. So what you got? What's coming up down the pike for you, man? What
Man,
can we look
I
for out of you
so
and your
I
works that you're doing?
with this, I moved over to operations as a true CEO. I've delegated and hired and contracted out certain things. If you ever, you can Google my name. It's Carlos Leguizamo, not related to John Leguizamo for all my older heads. Um, Google me. Look at all the things that I have going on. Go on Facebook. Look up Auto Digital. Look up Auto Media. On Auto Media side, I'm taking the things on my hand. I'm scaling it myself. I do weddings. I do headshots. I do a lot of custom content. It's sister company to Auto Digital, full service agency that's focused on marketing, branding, and everything in between. So I do from SEO to apps and websites and all things marketing and branding related, with an emphasis on my KPI main one is revenue. I like to make people money. At the end of the day, that's what we're all doing. We got to pay our bills. Auto media though, I get to be such a creative person. At the studio, I have a green screen. I can take many, many, many different pictures. But anybody in the DFW area, or heck, anywhere in the greater Arklatex, if you see this and if you need a wedding shot or a website, Google me, text me 903-283-8124. I'm going the old Mike Jones route. You can text me. I'm a real person. I do use a lot of AI in my business now because business is a lot of busy, and time management is my Achilles heel currently. So I need to maximize your time with me. Um, I got, oh gosh, I got a birthday in July. I got to see another year, and today was a blessing in of itself. I got to open up my eyes. I don't have really anything. After as soon as we get off, I'm driving my little booty to. I'm from Tyler to Dallas. As soon as I get off, I'm going to a networking event called Cloud Mixer. It's for tech professionals. Um, Man, nothing really, man. I just I got right now. I'm so focused on what I want. My dreams are what I want to do is of the utmost importance. Um, I can't think of anything, man, other than I just appreciate the fact that you let me come on here, and I think this was probably the best podcast that I've done. The first one, I started doing podcast interviews last year. I went to Louisiana, to Shreveport. Shout out to Brian Garcia, 318 Latino. It was Spanglish, English, and Spanish. And just go check me out. Follow me on social media. Again, Google my name. I got a lot of stuff out there, man, and you'll find me. I've been on this whole thing. I will say I was in a movie last year. Parole Money 3 was my first movie that I've been on screen. Um, and I have to tell you, brother, you've kind of inspired me to really get back into my passions. I had a YouTube channel that I interviewed people. I don't know if I will. It's called The Gold Standard. Everything that I do is like some emphasis to gold, Auto Nation, Gold Nation, Auto Digital, Auto Media, Auto Spanish for Gold. Um, it's very inspiring because I have a lot of passions that I stopped doing because of women. I'm not even gonna, I'm not even gonna lie because of girl, but no, man, I just appreciate it, man. God bless you and on this amazing platform and blessings to you and to meet your metrics on YouTube. I know the whole YouTube game. I had a channel. I grew to 1,200 subscribers and I just stopped. I just stopped. I start something, I never see it through, but not this year. So other than
Awesome,
that, man, thank
awesome.
you.
Absolutely, man. And again, I know you said you don't have much going on, but you got plenty going on. And to my audience, you've heard it from here. How to connect with them. He's all over social media. He's doing a lot of great things. So if this is the space that you're trying to get into, like you said, whether it's websites, media development, headshots, all that good stuff. I mean, he's kind of a one stop
One
shop,
stop
so to
shop.
speak. So connect with this brother, support him. Check out what he's doing, and if it's a good match, hey, make it happen. And again, if you've enjoyed what we've talked about this evening, just the whole process, the whole content and sharing, and pouring out our lives, our stories, with the hopes of inspiring and encouraging, please subscribe, please like, please share, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We want to inspire, we want to encourage, we want to uplift. We encourage, being transparent in our stories and just keeping it raw and real. Letting you know that, hey, you can relate. We can relate. We all go through our storms. We all have our challenging moments. It's one of those things when it comes to storms, it's not a matter of if, but when. But the
Right,
key is what is going to be your response when the storms hit?
right,
Are you going to allow these moments to defeat you, to keep you down, or are you going to use them as opportunities to grow, to develop, to level up, to tap into the gifts that God has within you, so that not only can you be blessed, but you can be a blessing to other people. And so I hope you were just encouraged as much as I was and inspired as much as I was tonight, hanging out with my brother Carlos. And I thank him so much for being a part. And of course, Carlos, you have an open invite, my brother. Anytime you want to come on the show,
thank
you're
you.
more than welcome to be back on. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. And just remember, to my audience, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep fighting that good fight, keep persevering, hold on to your dreams, make them reality. They can be, they're placed there for a reason, not just for you to just pass the time, but tap into that. Use your gifts. Don't let anybody deter you, keep you distracted, keep you off track. Yeah, it may sound crazy, wild, and outlandish to them, but it was uniquely destined for you to manifest. And who better to work that thing out with but having God at the head of it all, letting him guide your path, guide your steps, being your covering of protection. It'll be the best decision that you've ever made if you don't have a relationship with him. So that being said, I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in, and check me out next time for our next episode. And I look forward to seeing you. God bless and have a good evening.